Imagine an empire so ambitious that no border ever seemed enough. But what if Rome had tried to conquer the vast, unforgiving land we now call Russia? Now, picture their legions marching thousands of miles, cut off from reinforcements, trapped in a merciless landscape. No roads, no supply lines, and no single enemy to crush. It could have been the greatest expansion in history or the most catastrophic military disaster ever recorded. Rome had conquered 3 continents, built entire cities in the desert, and sustained military campaigns for decades. But this was a challenge unlike any they had ever faced. Keeping an army moving through endless forests, boundless steppes, and winters so brutal that even the hardiest soldiers would freeze. This wasn't just difficult, it was a logistical nightmare. And yet, if they had succeeded, history itself would have been rewritten. But what really stopped them? Was it the merciless geography? The astronomical cost? Or did Rome's boldest generals realize this was a war even they couldn't win? Now, imagine yourself in the boots of a Roman soldier. You were trained to fight in tight formations, supported by roads, supply lines, and fortified cities. But now, you're trapped in a frozen wasteland, miles from help, running out of food, and facing an enemy that attacks like ghosts, striking and vanishing before you can react. How would you survive? What would Rome have done to sustain its legions in such a hostile land? How would they have managed their supply lines across thousands of miles? And did they ever come close to trying? The answers lie in forgotten records and battles few have ever heard of. In today's video, we'll dive into the impossible challenges Rome would have faced if they had attempted to conquer Russia. We'll break down why this mission was an extreme gamble, the strategies they might have used, and the reasons why Rome never ventured that far. If you love stories about epic battles, military strategies, and the hidden secrets of history, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you these incredible, untold stories. Now, get ready. This is a tale of war, survival, and the limits of an empire. Rome built an empire on order and predictability. Its roads stretched across continents, its fortresses secured borders, and its legions marched with unmatched discipline. But what if this well-oiled system, so effective in controlled environments, was put to the test in a land where nothing was predictable? Russia was unlike any campaign Rome had ever faced. There were no wealthy cities to plunder, no navigable rivers to supply the troops, and no centralized enemy to crush. What Rome would have encountered wasn't just an army. It was an environment so hostile that every mile forward could mean a step closer to disaster. The brutal cold, endless swamps, and vast, uncharted steppes would have created an unsolvable problem, maintaining supplies and communication across an ever-expanding front. Rome knew how to fight structured battles, but how would its war machine handle an enemy that refused to engage directly, vanishing into the landscape and striking only when the odds were in their favor? Rome's military success relied on strict discipline, well-planned supply chains, and fortified strongholds. Every campaign was supported by an intricate system of roads, depots, and reinforcements, ensuring that its legions never fought too far from safety. But in the heart of Russia, this very system would turn into a fatal weakness. Without roads, supply lines would stretch impossibly thin. Without cities, there would be no reliable sources of food or shelter. And without a centralized enemy, Rome's structured battle formations would become a liability rather than an advantage. Even if Rome managed to push forward, every mile would drain its forces. The sheer scale of the Russian wilderness meant that reinforcements could take weeks or even months to arrive. Meanwhile, local tribes, skilled in guerrilla warfare, could strike at will and vanish before the Romans could retaliate. Over time, the cold, starvation, and exhaustion would grind the legions down. But if this challenge seemed overwhelming, history suggests that Rome may have already faced a similar disaster on a smaller scale. Rome had always prided itself on military superiority, but there was one battle that proved its limits. In 53 BC, Marcus Licinius Crassus led his legions into Parthia, expecting a swift victory. Instead, his forces were torn apart by highly mobile cavalry and relentless ambushes. The Roman formations, so effective in traditional warfare, became useless in an open landscape where the enemy refused to fight on their terms. Trapped, starving, and demoralized, thousands of Roman soldiers were slaughtered, while others were taken as slaves, vanishing into history. If a campaign against Parthia ended in disaster, how much worse would it have been in Russia? The Parthians at least had cities and roads. Russia had nothing but endless wilderness. Any Roman invasion would have been a slow, grinding death, with legions consumed not by battle, but by the sheer impossibility of survival. But perhaps Rome's greatest strength wasn't its military power. It was its ability to recognize when a war simply couldn't be won. Had Rome attempted to conquer Russia, it might have rewritten history or sealed its own downfall. The empire thrived on expansion, but every new territory stretched its resources thinner. A prolonged campaign in an unforgiving land, with no clear victories and no wealth to justify the cost, could have drained Rome beyond recovery. Many empires don't collapse from external enemies, but from the weight of their own ambitions. Perhaps Rome's greatest success wasn't in the battles it won, but in the ones it never fought. But if Rome had learned this lesson, did others? History is filled with powerful empires that ignored their limits and paid the price. So, was Rome's restraint a rare stroke of wisdom? Or was it just a matter of time before another empire made the same mistake? Rome knew when to stop, but did other empires learn the same lesson? Or did they charge ahead into disaster? History is filled with warriors who defied impossible odds, but few legends endured like Tarquinius. He faced ambushes designed to ensure his death, yet he survived every time. Was it skill, instinct, or something more? Discover the tactics, decisions, and moments that made him an immortal name in Roman warfare. Watch now and uncover the legend of Tarquinius.